Served on several boards and associations, the Academy of the Pacific, the Waikiki Rotary Club, Diamond Head Theater. Are you acting in that? Or just serving? Okay. And past president of Holy Trinity School in Hawaii. We, employees of the Aston Hotels and Resorts, know him as our Executive Vice President of Operations. Gary Ettinger oversees the operations of 28 resort hotels and condominiums, plus the newly acquired Aqua Hotels and Resorts. And this is throughout the state of Hawaii and on the mainland. Gary told me once he hailed from Roosevelt High School, with some of our distinct personalities within the community. He received his BBA and his MBA from the University of Hawaii, Manoa. Before he became our staunch leader, Gary was the Regional Vice President of Operations for Resort Quest. Some of you remember, Resort Quest was our former name before we got back to Aston Hotels. He has held various positions as Vice President, Pacific Rim for Colony Hotels and Resorts, and General Manager of the Embassy Suites in Maui. However, there's one position he failed to mention on his biographical sketch, which I hope he does not mind me mentioning. I feel it is a distinct honor to know Gary was the executive housekeeper of the Hyatt Regency Waikiki, my next door neighbor when I was at the Sheraton Princess Kaiulani. For those of our newbies within the organization, I'm sure you will find this of great interest. There is a possibility for all of us executive housekeepers to seek the upward path one day. So, who better than our distinguished guests to speak and let us know his vision of the future executive housekeeper. Please help me welcome Gary Ettinger.
I was asked to discuss what the future housekeepers would look like. I am either an executive housekeeper or a Japanese tourist. It's your choice. Sorry. I just came back from the mainland. My flight got in at 1 o'clock this morning, so if I start losing focus or concentration, it's one of two things. I'm either tired or alcohol poisoning. First off, and most importantly, on a more serious note, let me tell you how privileged I feel to be able to address all of you. The housekeeping profession is something that has been near and dear to my heart for over 40 years now. Actually, if you want to go a little bit back further in my history, which, will only indicate not necessarily career progression, but what happens with age and longevity. Sooner or later they get tired of looking at you and they move you somewhere else so they don't have to keep looking at you. I actually started in this business in 1972 as a lobby cleaner at the Hawaiian Village. That was my very first job. And I took it when I was going to the University of Hawaii in the evenings because I had a wife and a 10-month-old daughter that I had just returned from the Air Force with, which I didn't have when I went into the Air Force. And I found the need to try to support myself while finishing up my college education. And those 2 years as a housekeeper and working as a lobby cleaner at the Hilton in many ways were some of the most rewarding in my career. The one thing that you don't see in management that you do when you're actually out there, scrubbing a floor and putting a sealer down, is you can see the end product of your work. There are many days when I spend 12, 14, 16 hours at a desk and I have no idea what I've accomplished. And so in that time, I learned very early on in my career that there is a tremendous amount of respect and a tremendous amount of pride that goes into being a line employee in the hospitality industry. And one of the things that has helped me through my career is I've never forgotten the importance of those people that have made it possible for us to enjoy the benefits of being in this industry. You know, as most anybody who works with me knows, I take a tremendous amount of interest and pride in working with our housekeepers. It's where I started, it's where my heart is, and frankly, it's the future of this industry, because as you start to look around at other properties, other companies, you're going to see that food and beverage is becoming leased out. More and more hotel companies are getting away from operating the food and beverage. More and more hotel companies are getting away from providing a lot of the other services like spa services and other services. And they're taking most everything, the only thing that they're keeping in-house at this point in time is their housekeeping and maintenance departments. And so you really are the future of this industry, the foundation of this industry. And let me just say that I have, you know, as you will hear as I go through what the remarks that I do have to make, is that everything that I do, everything that I have done in my career is founded on the fact that when all is said and done, what our business is really about is providing guests clean, comfortable accommodations. And that really is the foundation. The unfortunate part about having so many people who work with me in this room is some of this is going to be repetitious. But I had the honor when I was working with Hyatt to hear Daryl Hartley Leonard speak to a group of general managers about the hospitality industry. And he was going on and on about how every general manager thought what they did was so unique and so special and so important. And he concluded by saying, at the end of the day, all you really need in any good hotel is a sign that says, clean sheets, good eats. And that's what the basics of the industry are. And so, having just come back from vacation and experienced a lot of different properties in my travels, I have a new appreciation for what clean sheets really means. Let me start with this, because public speaking is something that's always difficult, and let me start with a little bit of an anecdote about Winston Churchill and Lady Astor. And this goes back to just prior to World War II. And Winston Churchill was at a state dinner with Lady Astor. And if you haven't heard any of the stories about Lady Astor, she was a very talkative woman. And Winston Churchill was very introspective and very quiet. And during the course of the dinner, Lady Astor kept talking about everything from the impending war to the journey, to Hitler, to what was going on in Italy and everything else, and just kept going on and on. And then when she went past that, she started talking about her flower gardens and everything else. Finally, at one point, Winston Churchill turned to her and said, Lady Astor, I hope you don't mind, my foot's fallen asleep and I think I'm going to join it. So, if anything I say bores you, by all means, feel free to go to sleep. I promise I won't wake you up and I won't single you out. The interesting thing about our industry is summed up this way. A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. And we are in the midst of some very difficult times in this business. And, you represent the future of this industry. And how you respond to the changes in the environment, it will ultimately determine our success or failure as an industry and as a business enterprise. Let's start with a few basics about the hospitality industry. Okay? Your role as a manager of a housekeeping function really distills down to the 5 basic things that managers are expected to do. And those are to plan, to organize, staff, direct, and control. And those are the things that are going to affect the way of the future for your profession. profession and for what you do. Let's start with planning. You know, one of the things that has always bothered me and that we've tried to do as we've evolved within the Aston world is we forget that whatever we put into a renovation, whatever we put into a room, all of you are going to have to figure out how to clean. And so it's always bothered me that we've excluded the housekeeping managers in the development of renovation product. Part of the planning of the future is going to have to involve housekeepers into determining what surfaces are going to be installed in guest rooms, what kind of fabrics, what kind of carpets, how much space, the space planning within the room so that you can get the most efficient utilization out of your staff. Because there's nothing worse than walking into a room that's been overcrowded with furniture and trying to get something efficient, you know, especially since we're in a productivity environment, and get those things to work effectively. So one of the things that I expect will become more and more critical in the future for housekeeping is being involved in renovations, being involved in the planning of renovations, and you're all going to have to become increasingly more familiar with new surfaces that are being created all the time, and what kind of chemicals, what kind of products you're going to need to use in order to maintain those. You know, back when I first started in the industry and Formica was the product of the day, it was indestructible. Okay. Now all of a sudden we find ourselves dealing with everything from corian, which scratches very easily, to granite, to quartz, and who knows what other kinds of surfaces are going to be coming up in the future. And all of those, we're going to have to be professional, and you almost have to be a scientist in order to figure out how best to maintain them. Because one thing that's true, as your owners walk through their properties, they expect it never to age. And they're expecting you to take care of it. They, you know, for every owner, there's a prevailing belief that the millions of dollars they spent on renovation was spent the day before yesterday. So why doesn't it look like it? Okay? Secondly, you're going to have to get in line with sustainability programs and how to go ahead and make the most use. You know, I just came back from, as I said, I came back from vacation. I spent part of my time up in Oregon and California, which I think it's no secret they're going through tremendous problems with droughts and you know, the absence of water. I was impressed with some of the things that I saw as I toured through the two states and how they're adapting to what's going on now. Let me give you a couple of examples. I stayed in a green hotel in Bend, Oregon, and one of the goals that they've espoused for themselves is to rid themselves as much trash as possible and use as little water as possible. So what they've done, simple things. In the coffee presentation now, they serve bulk coffee in apothecary jars, and they use French presses because there's no water, there's no filter. No water. There's no filter, you know, to use. So they can rewash it, put more coffee in there, and they're done with it. On the amenity side, they've gone to 12-ounce push pumps on all the areas to avoid having all of the trash that comes from putting in the 1.5, 2 ounce bottles that all of us have been using now for amenities. I see Becky here. On the linen side, they've gone to pleasure towels that actually hold up longer, and so they ask you not to put them on the floor. They ask you to use them throughout your stay, as a courtesy for what's going on with the water, with the shortage of water right now. The 3 R's have become reduce, use waste, reuse wherever possible, and recycle everything. And it's actually working for them. If you pull up, David and I were talking as we were walking down here, if you pull up an electric car, there's no valet charge. If you pull up in a gas car, there's a $27 charge. I scrambled to find the electric car. The next thing is labor is going to become a huge problem. You know, when I first got into my first management job at Hilton in 1974, was during the time when the Marcos regime was going through all the upheaval in the Philippines, and there was a tremendous migration of immigrants from the Philippines into Hawaii, many of whom were professionals but were willing to take entry-level jobs in this industry. And actually, this industry grew, frankly, on the backs of those people that worked so hard and so diligently to help support the hospitality industry. That particular demographic is aging. You know, you're not seeing a lot of younger people, new generations, finding the same kind of satisfaction in service jobs that many of us found. In fact, there are many of the millennials today that would rather go without a job than take a service job. And so it's really, you know, one of the things you're going to find yourself dealing with a tighter workforce and trying to deliver a quality product with less resources, less people. And so you're going to have to spend a lot more time on workflow planning. You're going to have to, you know, and if one of the housekeepers who's in here doesn't mind, I'll use her property as an example for just a moment. You're going to have to find ways to keep your housekeepers from losing time and efficiency by running back and forth to closets, or running back and forth for supplies, or having to look for linen. Our company has gradually started migrating over to United Laundry's linen rental program because, frankly, we couldn't keep up when we're buying our own linen with the amount of linen in the par stocks that were really necessary in order to be efficient. We have properties still on the neighbor islands where we don't have that program. And I'm not terribly proud of this, by the way, but where we sometimes have housekeepers waiting for the laundry truck to show up at their back door so that they can go ahead and get started. That's lost time, that's lost efficiency. And so as you go into the future, you're going to have to spend a lot more time focusing on workflow, making sure that people have the products they have. The unfortunate part of our industry is that at times like this, and this year is one of those years where some of us are under pressure to develop better margins in our businesses, and yet the average daily rates are actually going down this year, but your cost of doing business is going up. So you get all of you get stuck in that crunch between buying what you need in order to operate efficiently and reaching the budgetary goals that have been set for you. Each of you is going to have to be there to stand guard and basically keep the barbarians at the gate away from you, the ones that want you just to cut because they need to make a financial number. I will tell you that in the long run, it's much more deleterious to your business. It's much more deleterious to your staff. And as I'll talk about in just a little while, in just a little bit, you're going to find that if you want to become in an environment where you're struggling to find employees, you're going to want to become a preferred employer. And you become a preferred employer by making sure that people walk away satisfied, feeling good about themselves. When they punch out at the end of the day, they feel they've been treated with respect. They've been given the tools to do their job, so they walk away with job satisfaction. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen as often as it should in our industry because we get caught in the pressure of trying to reach a budgetary goal. And by the way, for those of you that are general managers that work for me, disregard everything I said about because I'll still hold you accountable. The next, the other thing is there's new products coming out on the line that can help make your jobs more efficient. I got to tell you, sometimes when I look at my wife and some of the things that she brings into our house for cleaning and everything, and so you really think there's these little bubbles that run around and scrub the stuff? And every so often she comes up with something that actually makes sense. Although after a lot more people are using Swippers now for hard surface floors and everything that I've ever seen before. And there's new products, new ways. They're much more efficient than getting out there with the mop, having to change mop heads and everything else. And despite the fact that I thought it was an extravagance, in some ways it may cost more on the unit cost side, but on an efficiency side, it still looks to me to be much more efficient and much more productive. And frankly, the housekeepers that I observed while I was there were actually enjoying using it. Plus, it doesn't use water. And that was a big thing. Planning, and then the last thing on the planning side is, for me, it's just about making sure that you introduce people into your organization in the right way. You have to have a plan to onboard people so that they feel good about their experience. Too often we've lost people that we've hired because the onboarding experience wasn't well laid out, wasn't planned, and it wasn't set up for people to feel successful about their jobs. It wasn't laid out for them to walk away feeling good that they were working for our company. And so, it's imperative, most of us, and I've been guilty of this when I've run housekeeping departments, do the OJT thing. You take your best housekeeper, you pair the new person up with the new housekeeper, and what generally happens is they learn all the shortcuts and all the bad habits that the housekeeper has developed over the years, rather than doing the job most efficient and proper way. You need control on the onboarding process. You can't relinquish it to other people and rely on it that it's going to be handled properly. Next, organizing. You need to develop a structure that is well organized, has deliverables that are measurable, and that you can go ahead and use in training and developing your staff. I'm a huge believer in the saying that what gets measured gets done. And so each housekeeper's productivity, the amount of time in a room, the amount of time that you spend on any task, any project in your own area on the management side, should have a measurable result, something that you can step back from and look at and understand that you have done what was expected. There's a terrible problem with an aging workforce, and that the productivity standards aren't uniformly applied, and we make exceptions for some people as opposed to others because of either age, sight problems, or other issues. And that creates a tremendous inequity and an imbalance in your organization that makes it more and more difficult for you as a housekeeper to make sure that you can deliver the product on time the way that you expect to. I don't know how many of you in this room go through and at the end of the day are frantically trying to either release rooms, get an area cleaned up and prepped for a reception, or to do something else, when you found that what you thought was happening wasn't actually happening because people weren't adhering to the standard that you had, or they ran into obstacles. You need to plan those things out, organize it, and then keep measurement on it. You need to know what the productivity is in your department every day. One of the good things about living in today's era is there are plenty of electronic tools that you can access that can help you in evaluating and analyzing what's going on within your area. And that can be done on a daily basis as well as an hour-by-hour basis if you choose to. But you need to know that you've organized yourself in such a way that you have a strong handle on everything that's going on. The one thing that you can't tolerate today is a waste of resources, whether it's a human resource, whether it's a material resource. You have to know exactly where everything's deployed and account for everything, because if you don't, you're going to find yourself having those budgetary problems and the leakage and not being able to deliver the product that you want to. Next, and don't overlook the importance of this at all, you need to create a safe work environment for yourself and your teams. There's nothing more critical that you can do than to make sure that your staff is coming to work each day in an environment that is both safe and it lends itself to productivity. The challenge is we tend to overlook safety. You know, we tend to put pressure on staff to produce, to meet some productivity goals, but we don't give them the work environment necessarily so that they're working safely, especially when they're hurried. And by the way, that also goes into product design. It's really interesting. One of the properties that I stayed in on my travels had platform beds, but the mattresses didn't come out to the end of the frame. And my wife and I both nicked our shins several times on those things. So I can't even begin to imagine what's happening to a housekeeper that's running around a room trying to get their work done. Staffing. The housekeeping profession is going to struggle to find new human resources as the generations that migrated to the U.S. and accepted entry-level jobs is giving way to a generation that doesn't view work in the same way. This is one of the things that we have become much more attuned to is you're going to have to find ways to either recruit, to become the preferred employer and steal people away from other properties or other businesses, or you're going to have to start looking at outside of the box solutions. On the mainland right now, we're using a lot of J1s, foreign students that come into our properties at various times. There's actually organizations that will bring in foreign students to work on a rotating cycle. Some of our properties on the mainland are seasonal. They're both ski resorts as well as summer resorts, and so we rotate in and out with J1s. There's some advantages to it because a lot of the J1s that we're bringing in right now are from countries in Eastern Europe that really appreciate the opportunity to come to work in the United States. We're also pulling from the Caribbean, Jamaica, some other areas. And it's a good source of labor. The challenge with it is it works against consistency because they come and they go. They come and they go. And you're always in a training mode. But if you set yourself up and organize yourself so that you have a structure for onboarding them, and work with them and control what they're doing, it can actually be a very beneficial source of labor that you may not be able to find anywhere else in the industry. Let's face it, we live on an island. There's not a lot of people, there's only so many people that can migrate to Hawaii. And so you're going to have to get creative about the way that you go ahead and find those people. You also have to learn how to become a preferred employer. One of the things that we try to do is we try to make coming to work every day a great experience. And one of the things as leaders in this industry, I hope you'll all go back and look around your offices and ask yourself, are my people having a really good time? Are they, there's nothing about the job that we do that will make it easier. It's hard work, it's backbreaking work. I could make a bed 30, 40 years ago. If you ask me to make a bed today, you better have a medical professional standing by. Because I can assure you that from this height and this weight, getting down to tucking it ain't gonna happen. But at the same time, what we do try to do is we try to make coming to work a great experience. One of the things that we lose sight of is this industry, the housekeeping industry, we refer to it as a profession, and yet we don't always do everything to make ourselves and our staffs believe that they're professionals. So one of the things that all of you should think about is, do you have a certification program in your departments? Do you have an awards ceremony or a graduation ceremony when you bring in a new employee to honor them for having gone through the training and to get them some recognition so that they can go back out into your workplace with a sense of pride? It's amazing the things that we don't think about, but we in our professional lives. And if we really want to be a profession, if we really feel that we're professional, then we need to treat everybody that's working for us as a professional. They should be certified. They should be trained. They should be awarded a certificate when they've completed their training. There should be remedial training so that they can recertify once a year. I mean, that to me is treating your staff like they're professionals. And that instills a sense of pride and a sense of commitment that you don't necessarily get from just bringing people on the job and having them wait. And it's also a way, not everybody within this room pays their staffs at the same wage rates. And so there's other intrinsic rewards that you need to be able to provide people in order to keep them bound to you. One of which is appreciation. One of which, most, people that are in this room that work with me know that I make every effort to get to employee functions, just to say thank you to the staff and have a laugh with them. I like to believe that what I do makes a difference, but realistically, and I've told the staff this over and over again, if I drop dead tomorrow, the guests will still have a good experience if the housekeepers are there, if the maintenance people are there, if the front desk people are there. What I do is much less important than what they do. And so you need to make sure that you're treating them as professionals and showing them the respect and the honor that deserves. Too often, we don't. And it's really unfortunate, because if you create that organization that believes it's professional, that works together, that's united, then you will bind them to your organization and you won't lose them. Learning to manage productivity at different paces. I touched on this people that work at different paces. You touched on this just a little bit earlier, but that all goes with certification and everything else. We have, all of us as human beings have our certain vagaries and idiosyncrasies. We found that we have some housekeepers that don't like to wear their glasses because it's a vanity thing for them. And so you have to train people to see things when they aren't wearing their eyes. And so it becomes somewhat of a challenge in the process. Directing, learning to work with new paradigms, taking advantage of technology. There's so much out there that can help you do your jobs now. There's productivity measures, there's training. One of the things about training is we are now dealing with a whole generation that has become visual as opposed to working from written documents. We spend all this time writing SOPs and everything, when most of the people that work for you, the only people that get satisfied writing SOPs are the people that have jobs to write SOPs. Nobody else. How many SOPs do you have that are gathering dust somewhere on some shelf somewhere in your place? You need to start looking at taking advantage of technology in the training process, because Madeline had mentioned earlier that I was the president of the Holy Trinity School when my son was in school, which is true. What she failed to mention is they're now out of business. So I don't want to put too much emphasis on my presidency of Holy Trinity School. However, what I do want to say is that I did have an opportunity to spend time. My son is 28 now. He was 8 or 9 when he was at Holy Trinity. And I had an opportunity to spend a lot of time with the educators there. And actually, my son went on to Academy of the Pacific, and which is also out of business now, which may speak more about my son than it does anything else. But in speaking with educators, one of the biggest challenges in the educational field today is holding people's interest. Because we have a whole generation now that's tied to iPads and other devices, and that all the information they get comes visually. It doesn't come from reading. You know, my son, I don't think he knows what a book is, but he can certainly tell you what an iPad is, and he can tell you he can work at magic with his computer, and he can Facebook and everything else. People learn visually today, and we need to adapt our training methods to be able to train them in such a way that they can respond to. And that's through taking advantage of technology. The other things, you know, there's productivity software out there that you should be taking a look at. There's also dispatch software so that you know where your people are, and so that you have good control on their activities, know how much time they're spending, and they can identify who's been working efficiently and who's not working efficiently. Controlling. This is probably, if you were to ask me what's one of the larger issues you're going to have to deal with in the future, I believe that the government is going to loom larger and larger in what we do professionally in the housekeeping industry. You know, many of you have gone around town and seen in the last year or two the signs that go up on restaurants now, you know, the red, green, yellow signage. It's only a matter of time when you think about it for just a moment. What we do affects people. It touches their skin. You know, in some cases, for those of you that provide things like mouthwash or other amenities, they actually touches the interior of their bodies. What would make you think that if they're going to start grading restaurants on sanitation, that at some point in time they won't circle back to the hospitality industry and exert the same kind of controls? If you were to ask me what's the one thing you need to prepare yourselves for the future, and it would start now, it would be prepare yourself for government intervention and health inspections. Because I don't see how you can avoid it over time. Think about what's going on in the cruise ship industry for just a moment, with all of the noroviruses and all that. While I was on the mainland, my wife told me that she read something, one of the ships that was here was just returned to port for a norovirus. Believe me, you're going to see more and more, you're going to see that our industry is going to become subject to more control by the health department and other agencies that are going to have an active interest in how you handle your sanitation protocols. So I would definitely start focusing, if you haven't focused on it already, I would definitely start focusing on preparing yourself, even if it's through self-inspection. You know, making sure that you know that you're providing a safe and sanitary environment. It's very difficult to do in a productivity business. It's very difficult to do when you're trying to turn 15, 16, 17 rooms a day. You expect your housekeepers to touch everything that could possibly contain the virus or bacteria or some other issue. But the fact of the matter is, I don't see how you can avoid it. And what it may end up doing in the long run is affecting productivity, because you may find that you have to slow people down in order to make sure they touch all the things that are going to be evaluated by the health department. To me, it's one of the bigger issues that's going to confront our industry as time goes on. You know, safety, security, all of those things will be linked together. And finally, probably if you walk away with one am I being mean? I didn't. The Lord is calling and I am coming. That's interesting. Anyway.
Alert emergency alarm system, please do not be alarmed. This is only a test. Have your attention, please. In a few moments, there will be a testing of our emergency alarm system. Please do not be alarmed. This is only a test.
We didn't need him to do that, Gary.
ただいまより京王 お間違いのないようお願いいたします。ただいまより警報器のテストを行います。ご迷惑をおかけしますが、テストですのでお間違いのないようお願いいたします。
Madeline, I want to congratulate you on a unique way to tell me to solve time to go out. That's very thoughtful. Finally, and you know, if you walk away with this one thing from all of this, you know, there is no greater investment that you can make in what you do than yourself. And don't forget, you know, it doesn't only apply to your staff. It's you need to keep learning every day. You need to invest yourself, not only in yourself, in your knowledge base and making the time to learn, but you also need to make sure that you give of yourself to your team, that you're accessible, that you can listen, and that you spend time with them. You know, one of the things that I really believe it's the most, we all get caught up in all of the administrative stuff that we all get stuck doing, and everything has to be filmed, has to be filed in paperwork. There's 150 reasons that I can think of on any given day not to spend time with the people that are most important, and that's the people that are working with me each and every day. You need to give of yourself. You know, I have a saying that I didn't create, by the way, but I heard it many years ago. And it sort of sums this all up for me. And that's that you get what you inspect, not what you expect. You know, how many times have you heard somebody say, but I told them to do it, or but I asked them to, or I said they should do it? You know, the only way that you can be confident that the product you're delivering is the product that represents you as a professional is by getting out there, shoulder to shoulder with your team, and looking at what you're delivering. Because at the end of the day, you can do all of the other things I've suggested. You can plan, you can organize, you can direct, you control. But if you don't take a look at what you're getting, then you haven't got anything. So, you know, again, I have been honored that you asked me to speak today. I will tell you that I love the housekeeping profession more than anything. It's what I built my career on. I've also, you know, I'll leave you with one last thing. This is for the benefit of the general managers and some of the other people that are in Aston that work with me. The one thing that I've always wanted to do is surround myself with people that are smarter than I am. And despite Madeline's long-standing repertoire about my career and positions I've held and everything else, I firmly believe that every promotion, every opportunity that I've had is because I've had the blessing of working with people that make me look smarter than I really am. And that is the truth. And if you ask any one of my GMs, they'll tell you they're smarter than I am. But it is sincere and it is true. You know, you know, none of us are islands. You know, I remember when I got my first housekeeping management job. I just graduated from the University of Hawaii, and I walked into my office, and it was a big deal for me to have an office. And I walked in with all of my textbooks under one hand and all the right answers in my other hand. And it took about 3 hours before I found out none of it was worth anything. The people were prepared to train me. So, you know, please, you know, make sure that you invest the time with your teams. That's probably the most important. And again, one last thing. Roosevelt High School. And this is something I wouldn't normally admit, but as long as you brought it up, this coming Saturday is my 50th high school reunion. Which, yeah, that's what I said. So now everyone's going, God, isn't he dead yet? No, it's one of the things that I firmly believe that the nice thing about staying fat is it pushes the wrinkles out so you don't look at the So I work very hard at staying wrinkle-free. Anyway, thank you all very much.